Hey everybody, it's Off the Cuff, and I'm your host, Dr. Michael Lynch, and I want to invite you to watch another program. I have a little diatribe I like to throw out there in the paranormal community on how fed up I am with all of some of the stupidity that goes on out there in the real big world. So tonight, on tonight's show, which is a little pet peeve of mine. I'm just going to complain a little bit, of course, but that's neither here nor there. But for many years, ever since Project Grunge and Project, whatever project is out there, like Blue Book or whatever, Blue Book gave out the acronym UFO for anything that was unidentified flying object, and that could have been anything. Anything that did not have an identification signal or a transmission or transponder or anything of that ilk. Anything that was non-military. That was basically the concept. Anything that was non-military or non-military made was classified as a UFO. So birds could have been a UFO. Flying hubcaps could have been a UFO. Anything could have been a UFO. It was up to the observer, basically, to determine whether or not it was a strange artifact or it was man-made airplane, jet engine, did it break the sound barrier, did it leave a wake, whatever. So the UFO is anything that's unidentified flying object. Well, after about 50 or 60 years of using that term, they just thought, hey, we need to mask or cover up anything that might be released to the general public. And so they changed the acronym to UAP. Now, Hillary Clinton was one of the first ones to bring up the UAP. And in order for her to be able to talk about UFOs, kind of covertly, kind of under the table, so it wasn't like, oh yeah, I believe in UFOs or whatever, but there could be UAPs out there, and that's unidentified aerial phenomenon. Well, that could be ball lightning, that could be lightning, that could be anything of aerial phenomenon. What does that mean? What does really any of that mean? Well, that's just a code that was thrown in because they couldn't find another acronym. And so then they come up with the idea of drones. Maybe it's a military drone. Maybe it's a military, somebody else's drone or whatever. Okay, well, this technology for drones has been around for a very long time, and they didn't care to change it or add to it or make it generalized public information. They just said it's an aerial phenomenon. That's it, And so this is an unidentified aerial phenomenon for UAP. Now, once that was leaked to the press, everyone just jumped on it, like saying, hey, what is this all about? How come you readjusted the acronym? How come you changed it? Are you doing something in the background that we are not aware of? Well, this opened a whole can of worms, and many people think that the military stepped in and said to Hillary Clinton, okay, you let the cat out of the bag, and now we have to come up with a bunch of more BS in order to fool the public that there's no such thing as a UAP. So they really didn't like her opening that bag and letting the cat out. But what it did do is researchers went back in under the Freedom of Information Act and dug through a bunch of old papers. And these were from the FBI, they were from the US Air Force, and they were looking for the acronym UAP. They found tons of stuff, and they let this entire cat out of the bag. And so UFO became inadvertently UAP. Well, that was just the tip of the iceberg. The rest of it came out of Senator Harry Reid, who had developed with $20 million a whole program called not Alltech. That's submarines. I'm not supposed to tell you that, but Alltech is submarines. Okay, so they developed something called the Aerial Phenomenon Project or whatever. So Senator Harry Reid, with two other senators, started giving out funding to the U.S. Air Force, about $20 million, to investigate it. And so what they wanted to do, what they had to do, was give it a name, a project name, or a name stating their terms, what they were going to do, how they were going to do it, what were they going to look at, how they were going to analyze it. They had to draw up this whole thing. Okay, now the acronym for the acronym was called ATIP. And ATIP is the generalized version of what is thrown out there. Okay, so ATIP became kind of sexy because only a handful of people were handling ATIP information. Okay, and so when there was a jet aircraft, a fighter jet, a stealth bomber, or whatever, take a picture of an unidentified object or videotape it, catch it on their FLIR cameras or whatever, it went to ATIP. Okay, and ATIP then filed and categorized it. Now here's a very interesting story, which is behind this story, which is in a wrapped up and locked in a safe, put in a Ziploc bag, and written on top of it, ultra top secret. Here's the story. Now, believe you me, I've been in the UFO investigations for a very long time. I'm not an investigative reporter, but I am an investigator. It says right there on the top of the show, I'm a paranormal investigator. Okay, so let me just tell you a quick little story. We all have seen now the Tic Tac video, and how that was leaked to the internet onto YouTube about 2006. How do I know? I've seen it on YouTube in 2006. Okay, the Tic Tac video was not secretly handed over to the All Stars Academy. It was already in public information 2 years after it was shot, knowing that the public could do nothing about it. It was too little, too late, so on and so forth. We could not change the effect. We could not investigate it because it's out in the middle of the ocean. So what are you going to do? You could watch it. You could watch it and see all of the designations. The heat, registration, the wind, the angle, everything that Tic Tac did. But the question is, why was it released onto YouTube? Who released it? How was it released? Because in the reality of what was going on board the ship and the battleship that was doing the radar assessment of what was going on during those battle exercises, and they caught that original Tic Tac coming out of the ocean. That was a diversion because there was about 180, they counted on radar, but there was probably a little bit more than that, came down out of the sky. And so while the F-18s were out there, or, the F-18s, I'm going to say the F-18s, it could have been the F-23s. But anyway, out there chasing down the Tic Tac and video recording it, the others were coming down out of the sky. And then they said, oh my God, you can hear this on the tape before they cut it. There are 80 targets coming down from 80,000 feet, okay, down almost above the water and then taking off toward Baja California. All right. Now, all of this was classified by the onboard commanders and captains as ultra top secret. No one is supposed to know this. No one is supposed to investigate this. No one is supposed to touch this. So the radar operators automatically were told, okay, this is what you do with this tape, is that you log it and we'll never see it again. We'll just send that up to the big guys and then through ATIP, and they will do whatever they do. Well, what was so interesting was as they were assessing that material, and then they started joking about it on board, two guys showed up dressed in black, and they said, you will hand us all of those tapes, all of the hard drives in the computer from the radar, plus you'll give us all of the video from the jets that they had recorded. And so they took that out. I mean, this is not even public. The upper admiralty The upper generals in the Air Force and the Navy did not even know that this existed. This was just rumor that something was videotaped while during the games. That was kind of extraordinary. It didn't even get a chance to go up the ladder. Not at all. No. Okay, so what happens is these two guys come on board the vessels, the battleship and the aircraft carrier, and they said, we want everything. We're going to take it with us. And they did. They had a little bag, duffel bag, and a briefcase, and they took everything, the hard drives, the tapes, everything, and they slipped it in there, and boom, they're gone. Never seen again. Until 2 years later, something slips out on the internet and gets into the public purview. But the public at the time didn't know we had this type of radar system, this type of FLIR, forward linear cameras, to be able to videotape this in infrared and in regular video. And so the public was kind of like stood back, like, what are we really looking at? How can we analyze it? MUFON did not even know what they were looking at. So how did all this happen? So suddenly, did the Men in Black get a conscience and say, oh, maybe we should release this to the public? No, no, no. It was just somehow the Men in Black said, okay, this is what we'll do. We'll tease everybody. We'll give a little bit at a time, and we won't give them everything. Because one, at the time, the radar was probably pretty well top secret. And two, the onboard cameras of the ships were classified as top secret. Okay, so we have a lot of top secret tech and equipment that the public didn't know anything about. But the rumors on board the craft, on board the ships, were so vast. You know, they were making jokes about little green men and little spaceships and stuff like that. And the whole thing is that they could have been ordered by their commanding officers as a dead topic. This didn't happen, never happened, don't tell anybody about it. But that didn't happen at all. They just automatically, became very quiet. So what happens? What happens is that in 2006, there's a lot of politicians like Hillary Clinton deciding their political career. Okay, so if they cannot become president, they can become Secretary of State. If they can't become Secretary of State, they'll become Secretary of Transportation or whatever. But somehow this material, this access to material was released. And I saw it. MUFON didn't even know anything about it. So who's really in control of the UAP information? Hillary would not have brought it up unless she had been briefed on it. The presidents had already been briefed on it. Okay, so the president, the next person running for president had been briefed on it. And so the conclusion became radically that they were only going to give you one piece of information, not all of it. Lou Elizondo comes out to the Star and goes to the Stars Academy, which is run by that guy from the rock band, and not a sponsor. Anyway, so he goes, look what I've got. Okay, and then they edit out during the show that he was on. Lou had a television show that he was on, chasing UFOs or whatever, and they kept cutting out the number of other ships that were coming in. That was the media. The producers of that show and editors edited out what they thought was still ranged as top secret. What was top secret was the number of ships. Not that we had one on video. It was the number of ships. And when Lou goes and interviews the people that were there, the pilots and the radar people that were there, and they all sit there and say, we were outnumbered, it outflanked us. Everything we did couldn't meet or match its capability. And then, by deductive reasoning, there's 80, so that makes us 81 now in our airspace, between Catalina and Los Angeles. And there's 80 new ships. These are the new Pleiadian vessels coming down and going down to Baja. and we have no defense, we have no capability to investigate, and we have no ability to defend ourselves against this type of craft. Because why? It superseded everything that we have and will ever have, at least in my lifetime, known to the public. All right? So here's the thing. Here's the thing. Somebody released those tapes in 2006. I saw those tapes. I didn't really care. It was really, non sequitur for me. But for other people, it got real hysterical about it. Now, the only reason why you get hysterical about it is because you're the Air Force and you can't defend the American public, and therefore you can't control that media, and it needs to be tabled and then filed in a Ziploc bag somewhere in a vault somewhere underneath the Pentagon, because you can't defend your own airspace and your own public, which they were worried about. The other sector was we can't tell them about our new advanced radar systems. And the other people said the public doesn't really need to know anyway. But Harry Reid thought we need to give out a little bit at a time, and there should be a funnel of how it gets from DEFCON 4 threat down to the public. And so the channels were open. So people went to Leslie Kean. Okay, she's a good researcher. She's a great investigator, a great reporter. Kudos to her. She goes to other reporters in the New York Times, and then they say, okay, we'll run it by the editor. If it's written well, then we'll run it. And they did. And this opened up a floodgate. The floodgate was already open before. It came out in drips and drabs, not a full force situation, not like here we are, the American people are totally defenseless, and we have nothing to rival this technology. Okay, that's what they should have said. That's what they should have been honest with the American public. That your tax dollars, the billions of dollars which the Pentagon gets, and the money that they create, okay, at the same time, is useless. Because they don't have the ingenuity, the genius to come up with craft like this. No matter what Bob Lazar says that we have at S4, no matter how much we have reversed engineered, they still can't compete. Well, $20 million from Harry Reid was just a drop in the bucket. The Pentagon now says we need trillions of dollars to develop aircraft like this, if we can. I'm not saying we can. There's no way we can, I can tell you that much. But the whole point is that they're trying to now change the narrative to where UAP is not a threat. A UFO could be a spaceship from another planet. It goes into our brain. UFO, unidentified flying object, spaceship from another world. But a UAP could be anything. A cloud, dust, a tornado. It's just an unidentified aerial phenomenon. It could be anything. Ducks, geese. When Richard Nixon was president, 3 times our air defenses went into DEFCON 3 because the whole point was that there was flocks of Canadian geese coming from Canada into American airspace, and they went immediately to nuclear alert. And during Watergate, Nixon had the nuclear option to retaliate until our radar systems became viable enough to determine that geese were not a threat. So I'm at the point of saying, okay, if it looks like a giant and says fee fi fo fum and is a giant, and we can't defend ourselves against that giant, we're big boys, we should be able to accept that fact from our own government. Our government should be able to tell us, okay, we got a giant we don't know what to do with, okay? Warn me, let me know, inform me, just basically inform me, okay? You can protect me the best you can, but, inform me, okay? But no, they call it a weather phenomenon. And there's no reason to be afraid. Pacify the people. Don't let them know the truth. Sometimes our government is our best line of defense. The Pentagon spends billions of dollars on that in order to make us safe so we can sleep at night in our little huggy blankets and live in a false sense of security. But calling it a UAP or a drone or something nonsensical, why don't we just call them fairies? It's fairies coming from Neverland. There's no need to be afraid. We're living back in the 50s and the 30s when there are radio broadcasts that put people on the edge of their seat in fear, okay? Then that's from the Brookings Report saying that the War of the Worlds that was televised by Orson Welles put people into a state of panic and fear that we don't want to happen again. So they don't really want you to defend yourself. So they want to be the arbitrators of information of extraterrestrial involvement. And by the time it gets watered down and pushed through the funnel, it comes out, and then MUFON salivates because they think this is the hottest thing since sliced bread. And it's not. MUFON complained the other day that a lot of people that go to their conferences were like gray-haired and elderly. Well, yeah, because the average high school kid has a cell phone in his hand, and that's their alien tech. They don't need to go to a lecture on how you're chasing a phenomenon that may or may not be a threat, or even may or may not exist. Old people do that. People have time. People who want being squeezed at both ends. They go do that. The real truth is even beyond mass comprehension, but that's okay because, that's what the government's for, not the freedom of press, to keep the information from the press. So what irks me is let's not call a threat from outer space Tinkerbell. Just be up straight, be straight with us. Be up front. Tell us what you want. Tell us what's going on. That's all we ask. We're not asking for miracles. We know you're just an idiot colonel with a big budget that likes to wheel it around. But if you can't defend us, just let us know. That's my argument for today. This has been Dr. Lynch. I hope I have not nagged you too much. But remember, you pay your taxes. You should get something in return. And the least they can do is give us information. This has been Off the Cuff. Thank you very much for watching, and tune in next time. We'll have more.